what upsets me the most, right, is that with eating disorders, the topic itself is so taboo. People are too afraid to talk about things because they're too afraid to get cancelled, or they're afraid because they haven't had an official diagnosis, but they feel this and this by a doctor that's said your symptoms, and you have all of the symptoms. You don't feel like you're bad enough. You don't feel like you're good enough. You don't feel like you should be having the resources you should be having. That's the people I want to reach right now, because I can guarantee you what you're feeling is valid, and it is actually, in this day and age, sadly, normal. Hello guys, welcome back to the Girl Math Podcast. I am your host, Corey Blonde. If you are new here, make sure you join the family and subscribe. If you are not new here and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Because I upload every week. Anyways, we're here today again, and we're going to talk about eating disorders again, because it's currently prevalent in my life. And I'm not a healthcare professional, it's just from my own experience, and obviously it's a very serious topic. So if I come across not serious at times, it's just my way of coping. Anyway, not all eating disorders are visible. Someone you may know very close to you, you might not even realize they have an eating disorder. It might come out in different forms, and the forms today from experience is what I'm going to tell you guys to look out for. Or if maybe you have this yourself and you are a bit, oh, do I have an eating disorder, do I not? The first kind of big red flag is if you start to invalidate yourself and say, I don't think what I have is enough or worse enough. There's people out there struggling more than me that probably need the help more than me, so I'm just going to sit here and be silent, when that is a massive part of the problem. And you are completely valid in how you're feeling. My DMs are always open, my comments are always open. You guys already know this. We'll start off with binge eating, because as we all know, that is something I struggle with at the moment. It didn't just come on out of nowhere, even though it did feel like it. Binge eating, I think, stemmed from me being anorexic when I was younger. Around the age of 8 is around the age that I started to really notice I was struggling with food. I would restrict myself so much because I had a fear of food. So this is one common theme throughout eating disorders. If you have a fear of food, or you're constantly thinking of food and it takes over your life, this is something to take into account. I ignored these signs and I just kept feeding into the restriction, and I tricked my brain into thinking, oh, this food is a bad food, this food is gonna make me throw up, or whatever it is. And then I just became really conscious of what foods I was eating and what I wasn't eating. Then I just became severely underweight, and now as soon as puberty hit, as soon as I got older, my hormones changed and I started getting really hungry, and then I just ate everything. I went through a lot of trauma and emotional turmoil, and then I just began to binge. Now, they're two completely different sides of the spectrum, which is kind of crazy, and I didn't think that I would ever be here, but I am, and I still have hints of restriction. You might be asking, what is restriction? What is considered as restriction? And that's something I want to talk about. So if you feel like you are telling yourself, I can't eat this, I can't eat that, don't eat this, don't eat that, if you're telling yourself these negative words and relating them to foods, that can be the beginning of something that you might want to look into. Because why are you saying this? Why do you feel this way about food? Getting to the bottom of why could be the superhero for you to not get worse. And this isn't something I started asking myself until today. And my why is, I don't feel good enough, I don't feel worthy enough. I know that I'll never be a Bella Hadid, I'll never be a model, I'll never be to the body standard I want to be, and I tell myself that daily. And as soon as I eat one cookie, I end up telling myself that, and then I eat the rest of the packet, and now I'm 12 packets down or whatever it is, and I just wallow in it. And what you tell yourself is so important to what your body does. And that, for me, is how my binge eating starts. So I feel like the way I'm going to have to overcome it, and I've done it before but I've relapsed, is just to cut out sugar entirely. Sugar is my trigger. finding your trigger points is super important, because the minute I have something sugary, I want to eat everything that is sugary. So that for me is something, and always thinking about food is another. I'm stressing out if I should eat before I go to bed, and go to bed hungry, and just suffer with that internal battle in my head of, I need to stop myself, I'm being good, I'm stopping myself, but also I'm hungry and I want to feed my hunger. Like, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's hunger, it's more so my brain just being like, you're used to this habit, so you need to eat now. And it gives me that rush of endorphins that I just lack in my brain, which is also another thing. But because I'm quite self-aware, I'd hope so, that I can tell that, okay, this is because I don't have enough endorphins, and that's probably something chemically imbalanced in my brain, and that's something I need to figure out. But that is something, like when you battle in your head at nighttime, oh, I need to eat, I'm really hungry, but you're not hungry, but you're thinking about food all the time, and you're stressing out about breakfast, lunch and dinner. And then when it comes to the next day, I'll be like, okay, today I'm going to eat really healthy. I eat a bit of fruit or something, that triggers my sugar rush, and then I just eat the most craziest stuff in the cupboards, and then my whole day's ruined, and I'm like, well, I've already come this far, I may as well eat the rest. And like, that just spirals. So that's binge eating for you. Now I want to talk about anorexia. I feel like anorexia is a very scary topic to talk about, because I don't think, even to this day, I was bad enough to get any help. I don't think that, like, there's me telling you, you should always feel valid in your feelings, but it's because I understand that feeling. And I genuinely, still to this day, don't look at myself back then and think, oh, I wasn't bad enough to get help. I like, do you know what I mean? There's people that needed it more. But looking back, I was underweight, but I didn't have necessarily any problems where I'd have to be hospitalized. So this is where mental health comes into play, because I think my brain was more affected than my body in this case. And my brain was telling me to not eat pretty much any food that wasn't pasta. I would live on pasta, I would live on bread, or something that I knew wouldn't get me ill. And if it would get me ill, it would be moldy, and I could see that. Do you know what I mean? So it was me trying to control whether I'd get ill or not. So that was a sign that I had a problem with food. And, you know, I feel like the word eating disorder is a very taboo topic, and it can appear to be a really, really negative thing. But I think the most important thing is understanding, because people have had to label it this. People have had to label it eating disorders, because there's ways of helping specific eating disorders, and the way you can overcome it is by getting a diagnosis through the label. I think it's good that we have these kind of labels, and I know that's going to sound really kind of, maybe, I don't know if I'll get cancelled for that, but if we didn't have it, we wouldn't understand what our symptoms are, we wouldn't understand how to overcome it. And what would be worse is if we didn't have a diagnosis, we wouldn't be able to get to the root of the problem, and we wouldn't be able to get help, and we wouldn't be able to overcome it. We would just be suffering. But then you could also argue, well, if there wasn't a diagnosis, then maybe I would just be getting on with my life, and I wouldn't be telling my brain that I have this and that, and it wouldn't be worse. Because I think with binge eating is, if you tell yourself you have binge eating, you're more likely to just accept the fact you have that, just wallow in it and relapse, and it's really hard to overcome it. I watched a video from Wizard Liz, and she spoke about how she overcame her binge eating, and one of the ways she did that was by not labeling how she had binge eating. I think it just depends on the eating disorder itself. I also think it depends on the person you are. I do think the brain to body connection is very real. I also think that what you tell yourself is who you become. What upsets me the most, right, is that with eating disorders, the topic itself is so taboo. People are too afraid to talk about things because they're too afraid to get cancelled, or they're afraid because they haven't had an official diagnosis, but they feel this and this by a doctor that's said your symptoms, and you have all of the symptoms. You don't feel like you're bad enough. You don't feel like you're good enough. You don't feel like you should be having the resources you should be having. That's the people I want to reach right now, because I can guarantee you what you're feeling is valid, and it is actually, in this day and age, sadly, normal. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be normal that all of us have problems with food. It shouldn't be normal that we are constantly stressing about what we're going to eat next or what we're not going to eat next, or overly fixating on our body types and what we look like. And that to me is just, I just want to live my life. I don't want to be consumed by food anymore. I don't want to be consumed by my own brain anymore, as weird as that sounds. But I just think eating disorders as a whole shouldn't be as scary to talk about as we make it out to be, because we're all suffering, especially women. We're all struggling. And the body standard nowadays, there is so many different body standards and body types that, you know, one day you want a big bum, the next day you just want to be skinny. You can't win. You can never win. And accepting that you can never win and working on you and just knowing that you are going to have your own body type and you are going to look the best you can because you are you, if that makes sense. There is no other you. You are going to be the person that's going to look the best on you. You're going to glow in your own way. You are going to look the most beautiful if you're just you and you are just working on you. Try your best not to strive to be someone else. You can strive to be better, you can strive and you can use someone as inspiration. And that's what I want to make very apparent, because in this day and age, eating disorders are very heavily linked to appearance. And that's what I want to get into next. Eating disorders don't look the same on everyone, and sometimes they're not visible. Eating disorders are not the same. They don't look the same on everyone, and sometimes they are not visible. Like, you may look at me and think, you look average, you look fine, you know, I may have a bit of fat on different places, but you seem healthy for the most part. And trust me, I feel like, yeah, I'm not as bad as I could be, but equally, I'm not normal. I don't know what a balanced diet is. I don't know how to be healthy. I'm either on one end of the spectrum or the other. I don't know how to be the middle. And it's so draining. And this is why I want to speak to the people that feel that way. Body image, let's talk about it. So if you are constantly worried about your looks, if you are constantly worried about the way you are and you link that to what you eat, if it is consuming you daily, hourly, minutely, then that is where it could develop into an eating disorder. It could be an eating disorder already. Upholding with the social standards is tough, and I don't even want to know what it's like for people that are younger than me, having to grow up with what we have now. I only was introduced to Instagram when it first came out, and it was just pictures of people's new shoes or EOS lip balms. It wasn't anything crazy. Now we have TikTok, which is a video format, and there's not much room for editing there in terms of body image. And when you see someone that's perfect, they've got a snatch waist, they've got curves, but they're skinny, and it's like, damn, there really is people out here like that. And you know what? That is your biggest enemy. You are your biggest enemy by comparing yourself. And it's so normal. But it's not okay to do that for your own sake and for your own mental well-being and for what you eat. Because if you're restricting what you're eating, you're not going to be getting the nutrients, and you're definitely not going to be glowing in your own way, like I told you earlier. If you're not feeding your body what your body wants and needs, you're not going to be glowing in your own way. You know, when you see people and you look at them and there's something about them and they're just so beautiful, but they're not what you would call the standard ideal body type online. I've seen so many people and I'm like, you are just glowing in your own way. Like, I know you're doing something right. And that is where I want to be now. I don't necessarily want to be someone else. I just want to be me, and I want to be glowing in my own way. And that's where I need to go ask them. Next time I see someone and I'm like, you're so beautiful, I need to go up to them and be like, what are you doing? What is, like, are you mentally okay? Like, how did you get there? Anyways, I feel like, have I touched on everything? I feel like I have for the most part. I'm going to do another part of this. But I just want you guys to know that if you feel like you're going through something with food, body image, your mental health, don't feel like you've got imposter syndrome, like you shouldn't get the help that you need because you don't feel like your symptoms are that bad. or they get better and they get worse, they get better and they get worse, and you just think, oh well, you know, it's not one straight line. Well, eating disorders isn't linear. They never are. Like, one day you can be fine, the next day you can be awful, the next day you could just be struggling, the next day you could just be taking it hour by hour. I hope I cleared up some stuff, but I also don't know, because I can only really speak on binge eating and anorexia and fear of foods and emetophobia and all that, because that is something I have struggled with. But also I think it's important to nip it in the bud as soon as you can with eating disorders. And there's an argument to be had where, you know, having a diagnosis is amazing and it's great, but also labeling yourself as this and this can lead you down to a worse hole. So that's where we could have a debate maybe, because even I myself am a bit like borderline on that. I think it's great that we have diagnoses, and I think it's great that we have labels, but also Wizard Liz made a really good point of, okay, well, if you tell yourself this, then you're going to be that and it's going to send you down a hole. But I think that heavily relates to binge eating, if I'm honest, because I'm not going to lie, as soon as I started like talking about it online a lot, I started telling myself really negative thoughts, and then I started binging more and more. And I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to be so open, that my diet, I kid you not, is 90% sugar. And I know that's really bad. I'm not exercising. I'm not doing any form of exercise. And that terrifies me. I feel like now I'm going to be diabetic, or I'm going to get really ill. So that's something I'm really trying to cut out. Something that's helping me is dates. I know they're really sugary, but they're also naturally sugary. So I'm just trying to go more to the natural route as well, slowly. I feel like, yes, I should cut out sugar straight up, but it's so hard. So I'll let you know how I get on with that. But yeah, don't feel like you can't speak out about this, because you can, in this area anyway. Like, we're all open here. So yeah, if you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up and comment below. And yeah, thank you guys for listening to me talk, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.